Oh, great. We're live. uh, let's see. Only 3 minutes behind, and I had to wait until the train went by. And I'm hoping that it's not going to be too noisy out here. But quite frankly, I was burned out from sitting at my desks. And since we are discussing and exploring burnout tonight, I thought that it would be a good idea for me to walk my talk and uh, act on my own behalf and find a place where my undefined G center feels really good. So here I am out on my porch waiting for the sun to go down over there. I might switch it depending on how long I'm on here. Um, and hopefully, my computer, my laptop will stay where it is, and I'm not plugged in. So hopefully, the battery will continue to work. Just kind of waiting for the train to go by because it is kind of noisy. Um, so if you're on the line or if you're here, hi Mirza. Thank you. Welcome. Um, just go ahead and feel free to chat. We're exploring burnout tonight, and I've got some things to share from a human design perspective, from a gene key perspective. I even made some notes tonight. How about that? Uh, so if you've been following, you know that I have a whole series on the human design types and burnout and how the different energy types can burn themselves out. And I just wanted to see if anyone was interested in just discussing that a little bit, or discussing your personal burnout dynamics. And I'll actually share some of mine with you tonight as well. Um, let's kind of set the tone for this as another train comes by in the opposite direction, if you can hear that horn, or maybe it's up at another crossing. Anyway, um, let's set the tone. There are two types of uh, burnout, or two types. There are more than two types of burnout, but I want to talk about how we normally think of burnout as being work burnout, or burnout in a certain area of your life. Like maybe you've been a caregiver for a while and you're emotionally burned out, or maybe you've been doing something for a while that's not work and you're kind of burned out on that, or maybe you're burned out on a relationship. And you know you are, because a lot of times you just have lost interest in whatever it was that you were engaged in. You may feel exhausted. You may feel apathetic, like, why bother, what's the point? Especially with work burnout, your morale is suffering and all of that. So that, we think of burnout in that way. And then there's this other burnout that probably a lot of non-sacral beings can relate to. And if you're actually a generator, a manifesting generator, and you're in the throes of burnout, and you can relate to this, I'd love to hear about your experience as well. But there's this type of burnout that I call whole life burnout. We talk about whole life health and whole life healing, whole life coaching, you know, all of that stuff. But there's this dynamic that I've lived through, and maybe you've experienced it as well, or you've come close, of whole life burnout. And this is where, with typical burnout, you can make some changes in your life, like taking vacations or upgrading your self-care, or not doing the things that you were doing before that burned you out, maybe a career change or something like that, and you'll bounce back, right? With whole life burnout, it's kind of like your entire life, all of the foundational systems support systems in your life start to give away. Like maybe you lose your job and then your health suffers, and then your financial life suffers. Maybe your relationship suffers, or you lose a relationship. All of those things, when you're in whole life burnout, will start to give way. So I've experienced this in my life. And it, it was, and if you've ever heard my story, then you know that I had a whole other life before, right before that fell apart, right before I was introduced to human design. So it was good timing. And that included, all kinds of stuff, like losing my livelihood, or actually just being so burned out on my livelihood that I couldn't do it anymore for a while, for a long while. And, losing my first marriage, and losing a house, and all of those things that were foundational in my life, my foundational support system. And I actually consider myself a really good, an expert in burnout, because I have burnout in my chart. And let me show you where that is. Let me see. Mirza, you said burnout is something that many people have been experiencing for a little while now. Yeah. And I actually want to share something with you about that tonight, about the global implications of burnout. Let me see if I can find my chart again on this phone. Yeah, it spiraled into depression and anxiety after some changes. Yep. Mental fatigue throughout the day. Absolutely. For me, it was deep physical fatigue, where I couldn't actually mobilize myself physically. I wasn't depressed. I didn't feel depressed. But I would do a little activity, and that was all I could do for a while. And being a projector, that who was working as a manifesting generator for a long time, if you are a projector and you were in that position, how that depth of burnout can just affect you so physically. So here's what makes me an expert in burnout. See this gate right here on my undefined emotional solar plexus? It's known, is the gate 40, the gate of desire. I actually have that in line 4, which is titled burnout. So when when I am exposed to emotional energy, and I am amplifying emotional energy through my undefined emotional solar plexus, I'm sorry, that's the gate 30 line 4. One of the things that I experience is, I will inevitably, if I'm not managing my energy correctly, I will inevitably burn myself out. And it's also because the gate 30 line 4 for me is in my conscious moon is in the gate. Can you see that? The gate 30 line 4, right up there. So I'm actually kind of driven in that respect when I'm amplifying emotional energy and I'm not living on my side of the chart, from the root and the spleen and that my defined head and ajna. And even when I am, sometimes I can feel this burnout start to swell in me. And, I've lived it. I've lived it many times. I've recovered from it. Burnout and recovery is like an ongoing cycle in my life. And the one thing that I can tell you about that is that if you have a pattern of burnout in your life, even after you recover, like we all kind of know intuitively when you need to recover from whole life burnout, it's going to take impeccable self-care. It's going to take a lot of times some major life changes, which hopefully include you learning how to live from your design and aligning with your design, and is probably intimately connected to your deconditioning process. So, when all of that even when you have all of that in place, if you still find that burnout is a cycle for you, one of the things that you really have to understand is that self-care is not a one-time thing. You don't practice impeccable self-care, get back on your feet, and then go back and do the same things that you were doing before and treating yourself the same way that you did before. Self-care for people who are susceptible to burnout, to cycles of burnout, is a discipline that must be mastered. And I'm not talking about discipline like somebody cracking the whip out somebody other than you. And I don't advise you crack the whip on yourself, but it's a cycle. I've got a dog barking back here. Lost my train of thought. It's a practice that it's an ongoing practice that you have to master, and you have to continually upgrade your self-care practices as a discipline. It's not good enough to go off to a retreat once every 6 months to refuel. That could be part of your self-care process, your self-care system, but it's got to be a daily, everyday thing of giving yourself the things you need, of drawing the boundaries where you need to draw them, so that you're not wasting your energy, and you're leveraging your energy in a way that allows you to continue to operate within a container of support, where you are continuing to have the things you need to bounce back as you need to bounce back, so you don't fall down that hole again of whole life burnout. Yeah, despite good sleep and good food. Yeah, absolutely. And people have been asking me, a lot of people approach me who are in burnout, because it's a projector thing, but not necessarily projectors. There are other energy people who are other energy types who talk to me about burnout a lot. And, they ask me, especially projectors ask me a lot of times, how long it takes when you're in whole life burnout to come back from it. And there's no one size fits all. It depends on how deeply you're into it and how much you're willing to surrender to what your body, mind, and spirit need. And for a lot of people, that comes hand in hand with aligning yourself with your design and that so-called 7-year deconditioning process. And I would say that the thing for me is that it probably took me about, I would say, let's see, it's been probably took me about 4, maybe 5 years, because I was continually working with my own self-care process, and even and that took me to about 5 years into my deconditioning cycle, my first deconditioning cycle. And and still there were times where I would just overdo it and be not incapacitated, like can't get out of bed, but know that I really should not have done what I needed to do. And I had to go back to the drawing board to upgrade how I took care of myself. What did I need to correct? What did I need to strengthen within my own self-care routine and process that would prevent that kind of experience in the future? Yeah, the hardest thing was for me to sit on my own with my own racing thoughts and body sensations. Yeah, I've started doing a few meditations throughout the day to ground myself and center myself. Oh, absolutely. One of the things that I've personally been in tune with lately is that I get mentally burned out a lot. I have that. I don't have my chart up here, but I have a defined head and ajna. I have the 6447, which is I call it confusion to epiphany, and I have to wait for the whole download of a concept. And sometimes I'm waiting for years, and I'll explain that in a minute. But if I don't back off and if I don't recognize that I might be using my mind too much, like I need to rest my mind, even though I'm not taking in and amplifying mental energy, I can get overloaded in my mental energy body, and it will affect my physical body. And I'll get exhausted, totally exhausted by the mental overwhelm of what I'm thinking about and what I'm potentially downloading from the super conscious part of me or whatever, from the universe, what I'm constantly downloading that I'm trying to make sense of. And I imagine I don't know, Mirza, if you have a defined head or an undefined head in ajna, but if you do, or if any of you who are watching have an undefined head in ajna, I imagine that for you, it's very much mental, can be very much mental overload on steroids when you're under the influence of that defined head and ajna energy. So, yeah. And when you sit and you're quiet, it is hard at first, especially if you've got those programs running about, I need to do something, I need to be busy, or, say a lot of us run our own businesses. And one of the monkey mind chatter things that happens a lot of times if business is slow is, what am I going to do? What am I going to do to make money? Should I email my list? Should I get another job? All of that stuff that keeps us from really centering in our bodies and listening and just being present without having to push the energy one way or another. And that in and of itself is so fortifying and so nourishing to cultivate that discipline. And that's a discipline of self-care, to be able to sit, or if you have a defined head and ajna, maybe you want to lay down so that the neutrino streams aren't hitting you and your mind isn't extra active, but to be still and to just let that let yourself be present with your body, with yourself, and let those thoughts just do what they're going to do, but not overtake you. Oh gosh, my dog sees a rabbit or a cat. Yeah, you might be a highly sensitive person. Yeah, you feel overwhelmed. Absolutely. A lot of people do. Especially if you have a lot of undefined centers. I mean, there are sensitivity markers in the chart. If you're in the definition, there could be sensitivity markers in the definition of your gates and channels. But if you're really open, especially in the emotional solar plexus or the G center, or a place where you really take in other people, you are going to feel that when you're in crowds of people, and it will overwhelm you and burn you out. I am hoping that she calms down. I might have to get up and put her in. So self-care is a discipline. Remember that, but it's a discipline of empowerment. It's not a discipline of punishment. And so just remember that, and practice your discipline as though you are a qigong master. I am going to have to put her in. I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. All right. Quite emotional at times, and it seems that the rational mind isn't activated at times. Yes. I'm just curious if you have an undefined solar plexus center, and if that's a byproduct of amplifying emotional energy. Um, so I wanted to talk a little bit about uh, what's up with the transits, because I just happened to look at the transits today, and the sun is in the gate 35. Let me see if I can find that, which is right here. It's the end point of the sensing circuit as it moves through the emotional solar plexus and up to the throat. So this was kind of uncanny that I looked at this, because I'm actually I got a download on Friday. You guys might not know about me is that I haven't been doing this type of work, but I'm actually a trained intuitive, and I've been trained to work and do healing and clearing in the Akashic records. And my guides have been on me for a long time to use human design and use the gene keys hologenetic profile and do healing and clearing work on at a genetic blueprint level and a soul blueprint level through the Akashic records. And I've been waiting actually for several years for the so-called epiphany to come through about what kind of protocol that would possibly be. And I got it all in one download on Friday afternoon. So to make a long story short, I called a friend of mine who is into the Akashic record work, and I asked her if I could try the protocol on her. And it turned out that one of the things in her human design blueprint and her hologenetic profile that was very, very significant, that had connections that had, let me see if I can verbalize this. What I was looking for was the present or past life origins of what was triggering her to live out the shadow aspect of this particular aspect of her hologenetic profile, which was the 35th gene key, or the gate 35 in her human design chart. And so that took me on the journey of looking at what the gate 35 means. It's part of that sensing circuit, which has to do with it's the desire, like as in where my gate here for burnout is. So that's part of it. There's that desire that's fueled by the dreams that are birthed through the root energy, and it moves up and up to the throat through the passion and the emotion that drives expectation and the drive for experience, to have experience and to make sense of experiences. So the shadow aspect of the 35 in the 35th gene key is known as hunger. And it's a collective kind of a hunger for fulfillment. And I'm going to mess this up unless I find some markers in the book about this. And Mirza, I'm so glad you brought up that a lot of people are feeling this burnout, because what you're going to be seeing probably in the next week is this played out on this whole hunger for fulfillment, hunger of the species, played out on the collective stage. And you may even sense it in your experience as well. And this is such a this shadow experience of this 35th gene key and the gate 35 is such a strong energy that can drive you into burnout. Because if you're hungry ghosts, so to speak, that's what Colette Baron Reed calls it. If your hungry ghosts are hungering for the fulfillment that is never enough, uh, it's going to throw your entire system out of balance. So I want to just invite you to see how you experience this, because we all have all the parts of the chart, whether you have have this 35 defined in your chart, or whether you're going to be amplifying the theme of the 35 because it's in the transits this week. I want you to kind of encourage you to kind of look at this and see and observe it, and see how you possibly play out either the shadow, or you are living the gift aspect of it. And look at people around you as well. So when you're in the shadow aspect of it, you can either be really manic, or you can be bored. And if you have the Gene Keys book, you can read on it and contemplate it as well. But yeah, it's an energy, especially when it's wired to your emotional solar plexus. When you have the whole 3635 channel defined, it's an energy where you can kind of throw yourself into crisis and chaos because you're afraid that you're going to be bored, or you want to, or you have some sort of trigger within you that wants that next piece of fulfillment. And maybe, of course, if you have a defined emotion, if you're defined in this way through your emotional solar plexus, it's going to throw you into this sense that you've got to kind of rush ahead, when your emotional solar plexus really requires you to wait and get clarity about your next step, your next experience, or your next step into the next experience over time. So, it's going to be fun if you want to watch this to see how people around you, or how you get pushed into feeling rushed to have an experience that you expect will be fulfilling, and what happens when it's not, and how that may contribute to your burnout. Now, I want to just touch on the gift aspect of this, because the gift aspect is titled "The Only Progress Is Love," and really, this is about being in being in that place of self-love, of being in the place where I haven't read through all of this because I was working with this intuitively, so I haven't read all the details. I'm kind of trying to cram while we're talking. Being in a place where you can respect and flow with progress, because the 35th, the gate 35 in the human design chart is known as progress. So progress is inevitable, as inevitable as the up and down waves of people's emotions who have that, a fixed emotional cycle. Progress is inevitable. There's nothing that you have to do to push yourself to override your inner wisdom, your inner flow, your inner rhythm, um, to get to progress faster. It will happen, and it will happen in the right time if you allow it. So can you see how this, the shadow of this, where you're really pushing, where you're maybe afraid that you're going to be bored, or you're wanting to have that next fulfilling, you have this hunger for fulfillment inside that just can't be satisfied, and you want to have that progress really fast all at once when maybe it's not the right time, how that really can push you into burnout. So, um, I feel like we need to do something about that in terms of, some sort of an energy thing. What do you think? Yeah, basically explaining your situation. Let's see if we can pull some energy through for you and for whoever else is going to who is going to join us or is here. So I'm just going to allow and trust that we are going to make the progress that we need to make toward uh, opening into a place of a sense of curiosity rather than I've got to have a sense of even if you're in this in a whole life burnout situation, this can be give you a sense of adventure with the right perspective. Because when you've burned yourself out to the point where there's nothing left, it means that you've created a space for something new to come in. But that's the things that will grow in that space where there's the burnt and charred aspects of your life will not grow there overnight. Just like a seedling will not grow into a full tree overnight. So there's this need to create that space with love for those embers to cool and for the carbon that was created from the burn to nourish the ground substance and the foundation of your life so that the new things can emerge and grow. So take some deep breaths. And if you want, put your hands on your heart. This is where you want to create that space, that opening for the new growth. Because you may be feeling like your heart space is closed down or uh, heavy and overburdened. So let's just breathe into the heart space. And let our train pass by. And we can use that frequency of that horn to shake up anything that feels heavy in the heart. A lot of times what's there, especially when a lot of your foundational pieces have burned out, what's there in the rubble is grief. There's a lot of loss that comes a lot of times with whole life burnout. And there are cycles, especially when you feel that your heart is heavy. it's a cue that you it's time to pay attention to what's in there and to work your way through some of the rubble and clear out some of the grief. So let's do a little of that right now. Let's do a little rubble clearing. So I want you to imagine that there's a connection, like a I don't know, a drain pipe or an opening from your heart down into your solar plexus center, not your emotional solar plexus, but your actual physical solar plexus in your lower rib area. And if you're having trouble locating that, take a deep belly breath. And that place of tension when you inhale is where your solar plexus is. So your solar plexus holds the fire for your empowerment and your power. So I want you to just tap in, because you may be feeling like there's not so much fire there, right? Like, like there's a need, or there's a, like maybe your power has been stripped away, like the energy of your power has been stripped away, and that's the fuel for your fire. So, we're not going to deal right now with, how you may not feel empowered, or where you may feel like you don't have power. Right now, we're just going to take some deep breaths, deep belly breaths, and see if we can kind of stoke that energy in the diaphragm. And again, we got a train coming through. So, use that vibration if you can hear that, and move that vibration and that sound through your diaphragm. Like you've got a roaring train in there that's really trying to get things moving. If taking deep breaths is going to make you lightheaded, just hold on a minute, because I'm going to connect with you, all of you, whoever you are, through distance. And I'm going to do some breaths of fire. So just hold on a minute. Okay, I'm going to try that again. And let that energy just circulate through your diaphragm. And if it, as it does that, just imagine that you've got some flames going in there, and they're sort of heating up and opening up that connection between your diaphragm and where those embers are, those burnt, charred embers are in the bottom of your heart space. And as that heat in your diaphragm, that fire in your diaphragm, even if it's just a little tiny flame, as it starts to heat up, just imagine that it's heating that area. It might even feel like a little heartburn. Heating that opening, heating that up, expanding it out until those embers just begin to trickle down into your diaphragm, adding fuel to your solar plexus area. That's what those charred, burnt embers that contain maybe some grief and that heaviness in your heart, that's what it's for. It's to fuel the fire that creates the energy for the power and empowerment that you use and mobilize through your diaphragm. So keep breathing and just relaxing and opening, and allow all of those embers to come through. And as they do, just imagine that you've got that fire going. Just imagine that it's starting to pick up and get stronger. Maybe take a couple deep breaths, especially if you're feeling that heartburn feeling. And as those embers come through, just let your heart fill with the emotions that are being burned and catalyzed for your transformation. And breathe through whatever you feel. Just breathe it out on your exhales. Take a big inhale, gathering up all of that emotion, feeling it fully, and then exhale and gently let it go. As though you're exhaling or blowing out the smoke from the fire that's burning within you. And in that smoke, you're providing a release for what was once clogging up your heart. Now tune into your heart space and feel how much more open it is. And if it isn't, you can always go back through this and work with this imagery and this breath work over time to clear it out. But just imagine for now, because your body only knows what your mind tells it, that it's more open. So now you have a clear space, a clearer space that you can begin to fill with love, with self-love, with acceptance, with forgiveness, and with the curiosity that brings about adventure. And as your heart opens more and fills with these new vibrations, these new energies, feel how much more expanded you are and how much more open you are to the next new opportunity and the next new experience. So when you're ready, you can always come back to this. I think we need to bring it to a close now. When you're ready, just come back into your physical sensations in your body. Feel your feet on the ground and slowly open your eyes. All right. So, we covered a lot this evening about burnout and whole life burnout. I think that's what I'll call this live stream. And I really appreciate that you were here. And I appreciate the people who will, those of you who will be here, along our human constructed space time continuum on the Earth plane. Uh, and know that this energy is available to you at any point along the way. I'm so glad you liked it, and I'm so glad that you felt like you benefited. Yeah. It's always important after we do these kinds of energetic transformations, energetic shifts, to drink a lot of water. Um, don't be surprised if it's getting to be evening where you live, that you might be a little bit hyped up for a little while, but try to make yourself try not to burn yourself out by using that energy up. Just allow that energy to circulate and integrate. It's all that extra energy is kind of meant to permeate your cellular structure and support you in your deconditioning process, in your burnout recovery process, and in your ability to stay resilient as you move through your days. So, all right. So if there isn't anything else, I think that's about it for us tonight. Thank you for bearing with me with the trains going by and the dog barking and all of that. Um, I just wanted to be in a different place today, this evening, and this actually is being outside has really helped me, even with all the external distractions, to kind of tune into my own energy and to let that energy and my own connection flow. So I really appreciate that you've been here and you bore with me on that. Um, yes, please do try to catch me more often. I This is kind of my normal time. I was doing it about twice a month, but I can't guarantee that I will actually do these live streams at this time on a Sunday twice a month. I will work on doing it maybe once a month, and I'll tell you that I'm on periodically. When the mood strikes, I have a splenic authority. So, yeah. And I've been working with my own energetic guide team. And actually, this particular live stream was scheduled because of like a prompt that I got back on Wednesday. So I'm never quite sure. But generally speaking, I'm on a few times a month or a couple times a month live. Maybe not with this whole energy alignment, but I am going to make a commitment now that I'm a little bit more settled in my new place to do it at least once a month from here on out for a little while. Oh, you're in Vancouver, yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Vancouver is on my I attract a lot of people from Vancouver actually because it's on one of my astrocartography lines that are really good for careers. So career and um, career and business connections and connections like this. So I'm so glad that the energetic network, the ethereal network, is working and that we've connected. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I see that some other people have come on too. So thank you guys for showing up. And you can always catch the live stream or the recording of the live stream if you didn't catch it live. And if you are not subscribed and you want a little more of this and a little more of my human design perspective and whatever else is going to be coming up with this new evolution in my work with healing and clearing. this new healing and clearing protocol, go back in the video if you missed that. You know, it'll be here. I'll be sharing it with you. And thank you. Have a wonderful evening, afternoon, wherever you are, and we will talk again soon. Be well.